Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and you all know how I am. Let's call the meeting to order. Don't make me get my gavel out now. I'm calling the meeting to order. We're going to begin the meeting with the report on the GMP from Hewlett Spencer. If you guys would like to go first, I'd like for you to go first. So come talk to us. Yeah.
I don't know if they're used to.
That's 3.4, guys, on the agenda, the GMP for, and all of their report. They're here, and I want them to have an opportunity to go first. Stan, we're letting Hewlett Spencer go first.
He looked younger on camera.
Do you want me to speak to the budget first?
Yes.
Okay, in your packet, you will find, and I think they were gonna be ready to put it up on the screen. It's the attachment that goes with the final budget in GMP for the replacement of McDowell Elementary. If they can pull that up on the screen, that attachment, I'll have to tell you what budget agenda. It's, agenda item
3.4.
3.4, that is correct. 3.4, there's an attachment, and in that attachment, it shows you a budget worksheet, it's page 2, that shows you the budget that has been set out that includes the GMP from Hewlett Spencer. It includes the low voltage budget. We have worked with systems integration to put that together. Also, there's a furnishing budget. We've worked with Ernie Morris Enterprises. The playground budget, we use the same numbers that we used at Battle Creek Elementary, and I think the Battle Creek Elementary budget was a little over 110, so we put 115 just to give us a little bit of playroom in case prices go up. And then also accounted for the design piece with the ESA. So everything's detailed there, and I think Jamie Spencer's there, and he can speak to the GMP, or he or Ben Metz can help answer any questions.
Okay. Who? Jamie. All right. Thank you.
Testing. All right, got it. I'm pretty used to speaking in front of this board, so I should have this down. I know I normally don't wear a sport coat. Thank you for pointing that out. It must be an important night if Jamie's wearing a sport coat. Will said the same thing when he walked in, or Ben or somebody did. But look, the McDowell project, we're proud to present the GMP that you have before you. I know Stan's put the budget outside of what our GMP Hewlett Spencer letter is that we presented to the board. Our GMP totaled $21,499,910. That letter is before you, I believe, in your packet. And really, I want to say that this has been, quite a journey to get to this point. I know there was a lot of discussion regarding McDowell Elementary. We all know the condition that school is in and what the staff and the parents and the children, more importantly, have been living through for quite a long time here. We got involved pretty early. There was a budget set at that time. Obviously, you know and see that it was somewhat less than the GMP that is before you. At that time, we had, a schematic set of drawings, which, as you guys know from working with us so long, is just sort of a first shot at what the school would look like, mainly contained square footage. Ben and the team at ESA and all the engineers involved, and so we took a shot at a budget, and Lord knows we have been in front of this board so many times, and what's the one thing we hate to do in early in a project, and I see Chad over there shaking his head. And we always get asked, how much is it going to cost? What's the budget? How much is this going to cost? And we are so resistant to give numbers out on the front end. I see Stan, he probably is smirking over there too, because we've tried to train Stan not to give out any numbers on the front end, because it really hurts sometimes to give a number. Why? Because it sticks in a community, and the last number you hear is what you think. And the truth is, you don't know what it's going to cost until you get to a set of documents that we can bid on the hard bid community. And so, just to not belabor this point, we underestimated a little of the site work on McDowell. That contributes a pretty good percentage of why our GMP is higher than what we thought 8 months ago. And I'll say 8 months ago, that's about right, 9 months ago. And then we've just had, in general, a 5% increase in construction costs across the board. Not just Murray County seeing that. Every county is seeing that. That's why Wilson County is building a $110 million high school right now. The construction costs have just continued to kind of go up steadily. So we've had some increase as well. But I do want to tell this board that we did not go and price the first iteration of this school. There were, I really can't tell you how many meetings we've had with staff and with Stan and Dave, Dr. Marzak, Principal Pennell and her staff, and with our architects and engineers. And the first time we saw the schematics, guess what? It was out of budget. It's just like the Battle Creek schools were out of budget when we first drew them. Just like Spring Hill High School is out of budget. We'll probably talk about that later at first, because that's just how the process works. And it takes our process and this team to do what we do, and I know this board is very familiar with that process and how we really hammer down and work hard around a table and meetings after meetings with the engineers and with the contractors, the folks that are actually doing the work, to try to get this board, the county commission, and the taxpayers of Murray County the best possible price for the product that they get. This school will be another quality educational facility brought to you by a team that I think is the best we've ever worked with in 23 years. We present this county a quality product and a school that's going to be around for 50 plus years. So with that being said, we present to you tonight a guaranteed maximum price of $21,499,910 for a new McDowell Elementary and the site work associated with it. You can see the other soft cost items below that Stan has on its sheet. I believe that the total funds needed to proceed as is $22,918,000. I know the board will discuss that. And then one last thing I want to mention, and this is important, and I want the board to hear this. We took one item and made it an alternate. And that one item is the demolition of the old school. Okay? There was a lot of discussion about, the cost of taking down the old school. And of course, if any of us were on a sidebar conversation and you asked me, do we need to take down that old school? We do. We need to take down the school after the new one's built, in my opinion. But there was several things that were kind of knocking us out of budget, and we worked on a lot of them. We whittled a lot of them down, but we couldn't ever really eliminate the demo of the old school. And it was just one of those big money items that was at first almost nearly $500,000. We've got it down to just about $400,000, but it's just one of those things that, and talking with Stan, that we just didn't feel comfortable including on the front end, just to try to keep the price where it is, to keep that total guaranteed maximum price, essentially below the $23 million. Try our best to get that, and so we just added it as an alternate. With the school, once the school is sitting up there on the hill where the current playground is now, it sure would be a shame to see the old school sitting there the day we cut the ribbon. But it was just one of those things where we just felt like, we really need to get the school board's input on this because it's such a large ticket item, and we don't want to make that decision and just put it in the GMP and hopefully they'll bless it. So we did pull the demolition of the old school out and have it as an alternate. If you choose to consider that alternate and vote for it tonight, then you would vote for the GMP as Stan has presented it, to include the demo of the existing building at $408,065. And that's a price, too, we worked at for over a month to try to make sure we had all the best prices in getting that school down to the ground, leveled, cleared, and looking nice in case you do choose to move forward with that alternate. That being said, Madam Chairman, that's really all I have to present on McDowell Elementary, and we are open for questions if you have any.
Now, we don't vote on this tonight.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
a work session. So, and Stan, just my memory may be failing me, but what was the ask in the, capital, this is how much over that, what we asked the commission?
Was that directed to me? I'm sorry, that broke up a little bit.
What was the capital request that we have already made to the commission for McDowell? So,
We estimated $20 million.
okay,
This is what we put in our original capital request.
so this is of course over that. Do we not have some money left that was earmarked for McDowell and the EMG that was to be used for air conditioning, and we didn't use it, $1 million that we were, Dan?
We have approximately $1 million left in EMG money that, it's just a little over $1 million, that we do have earmarked for McDowell. That could possibly be used for this project. Now, one of the things that concerns us is if something breaks between now and the time the new school is finished, we would have to, for instance, you know, we're very concerned about the chiller there. That's about a $150,000 item alone. So, there may be some things that we would have to step up and fix in the interim. But if we had the commitment to move forward with this, I think it would be prudent to apply that roughly a little more than $1 million to the cost of this project. That'd be a possibility as well. Also, when I'm speaking, let me say that on the demo, one of the things that we discussed during the discussions we had with you, Spencer, is possibly leaving the demo as an alternate and using any savings for the project, from the project for that. As you remember with our project at Central High School and now our project at Battle Creek, there have been savings. Now, Hewlett Spencer will not guarantee there will be any savings, but we feel like that we might be able to take that opportunity to look to see if those savings are there before we commit to the demolition. It's just one option for the board to consider.
All right, Mr. Penning, or excuse me, Mr. Beaver?
Thank you, ma'am. On the demolition,
Yes, sir.
I know, the county commission's having problems with the landfill,
Mm-hmm.
and, I know they're, I guess, looking at a deal, going to another county.
Yep.
With all this.
Yep.
And there's quite a bit of cost increase. Has that been taken in consideration to this $408,000?
Yes, sir, it has.
Okay.
That's a great question, Mr. Beaver. Also, it was brought up at a county commission building committee meeting that they actually wanted us to kind of hold off maybe from us pursuing this, that they may have an option available that could be cheaper than the number we have bid out once they figured out what they were going to do with their situation. That did come up, but at the end of that conversation, it was y'all need to still price it as if, you know, we don't have a solution to our issue and we can't provide it. You know, that's where they were going to build their on-site sort of crushing machine, you know, that kind of stuff. So it was brought up, but we weren't able to use that to price and to put into this number. So this number is Bell hiring a demo person and having an on-site place to get rid of everything that gets demoed and leave it level and seed and straw it.
All right, thanks, sir.
Okay, Mr. Penning?
First off, I can't believe they won't save us money, they always do. Yeah. Second off, if you don't do the demo, where are you gonna put the playground?
Put the what?
Playground.
There's room for the playground now that's drawn into the plans, Mr. Pennings, but it's not where the current school is.
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of the original strategy was to build the school behind, as you're aware, and then use where the existing school is for parking and playground and other things. As we began to lay out the site, we actually realized, number one, we could save some money on the site by reducing the overall footprint of what we're disturbing, and there is actually also room on the other portion of the site for the school and the playground and associated parking.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Let me be clear then, that you all are saying, even, we know that Stan had a higher figure in his communication, but in your letter, you're saying 21,489, can't read it very well, 21,499,910.
Yeah. That should be what our letter states, I believe.
Okay, and then that's not with the demolition. If the demolition was included, it would be on top of that.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
All right, so what you would be we would need to do, when we vote on this at the board meeting, would be to vote on that as well, but
You would need to add that demo price to the overall GMP. Stan brought up a great point, and Mr. Pennings, you kind of echoed it. You remember when Steve and I stood up here at the beginning of Battle Creek, and we did not have the sports fields in the project. You all remember that clearly when you were here.
Yes.
And Steve said, guys, I really feel like, the way our process works and the way we manage jobs, we should be able to build these sports fields for you at some level. But at this point, we just cannot commit to doing that. And we had a certain number we were trying to hit then, for county commission approval. You all remember it. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's been, 60 days ago, 90 days ago, we got to the point in the job, just as we said we would, and we had, some additional funds there. About $1.3 million, I believe, is what we ended up putting towards the sports field. So Stan brings up a great point. It's the way our process works. It worked at Columbia Central that way. It's now worked at Battle Creek, and it is a possible solution for the board to think about if you don't want to go to the county commission at this time and ask for that additional funding. It's just we can't commit to that right now, just like we couldn't commit to the sports fields.
Okay, understood. So we've got several things to consider here, whether we approve going forward with the GMP you presented, and whether we are going to ask the county commission for the excess money, or we'll roll the dice with you all we bet on you before and you've come through. We have $1 million that we would hope not to spend, a little more than $1 million that's been earmarked for McDowell, correct? Am I stating this correctly? So it'll just be up to this board as to what we want to do. Mr. Pennings?
I would just caution the board with everything that's going around now with Title IX about the sports fields or whatever. You may want to think long and hard about that. Because to do a new school and doesn't come up to Title IX, I think you're just asking for more trouble.
What would you have in Title IX there wouldn't be at the elementary school any athletic facilities needed? No. No, Chris is saying no. So it's not that, even though we've discussed that so many times and we're aware of it, but I don't think that that's a concern for the elementary school. Anyone else?
Ms. Chair, Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Chair.
If I could just add, and I apologize, the sound is broken up on me a little bit, but I want to make sure everyone's clear. We are not recommending the GMP, we're recommending the total budget. So the amount that we would have to need if we do not include the demo is $22,918,410. That is the amount that we would need to build the McDowell. If you added the demo, that would then go up to $23,326.14. So I don't want anybody to look at the $21 million and say that's the price. The price is not $21,499 again. You have to include those other items. We're going to recommend. So the price is $22 million.
Is this battling prices here? So you're saying that we shouldn't consider the 21, but rather your letter?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. You have to add in the low voltage, the furnishing of the playground.
Gotcha.
Those other things that have to be included. Those are not included in the GMP. So that's the way we've done all of the schools that we've built, is we brought you the GMP plus the extra furnishing, fixtures, and equipment.
Correct. Those things are not in our GMP or our umbrella. They're under Stan's umbrella as separate from our GMP, and that's the way it's worked on every project.
So the price is $22,918,410, and then you would add, if you wanted to add the alternate for the demo, that's an additional $408,065.
Correct.
Okay. Lots to consider. Thank you.
Thank you,
Do you have there's other things on the agenda as well? So.
At the board's discretion, we're happy to jump into Spring Hill High School if you'd like to do that now, or we'll wait for your direction.
I think we'll go ahead and let you all present all you have to present, and then you all can head back to wherever you head back to.
Sounds great. We'll bring up Ben Metz with ESA to kick that off, Madam Chair.
Hello, thanks for having me back, and I appreciate the accommodation at the beginning of the meeting. That's a nice treat. We did want to bring you up to speed with where we're at with the planning for Spring Hill High School. We have put together a conceptual package. We presented sort of a really basic concept to you all a couple months ago. We've made a lot of progress since then, and just wanted to keep you up to speed with where we are. So one comment I wanted to make about the existing school, you can see the first floor plan here. We did an exhaustive study of what types of spaces you have in your existing school today. And so when you ask what is the capacity of Spring Hill High School today, it's actually, there's no one easy answer. So I wanted to point out a couple things. The auditorium, it's really sized for a school of about 750 students. So it's woefully undersized for the school and the way you're using it today. Conversely, there's enough classroom space for about 1,100 students. So classroom space, you know, is a little higher than some other spaces. Dining is also about 750. It's really, really too small. The athletics situation, I've actually, to be honest, never seen an auxiliary gym quite this small, so to call it a gym is almost not fair. So that's one of the things we really wanted to look at, was make sure that we're programming this school appropriately for the future. So just to share a few slides, this is slightly different from what you have in your package. I've condensed it a little bit, just so you know. This shows the existing second floor, which is primarily classrooms. We wanted to be really clear about what we're planning on tearing down that's part of the existing school. So this red dashed area, which is the auditorium, the dining area, and then the addition that was put on later, which has the coffee shop and the Project Lead the Way lab, as well as the part of the administrative suite. So those areas need to come down to make room for the new. One thing we try really hard to do is look at every space and say, hey, if this is too small for what you're using it for now, could it be something else? We really don't like to tear down, you know, a lot of building, because you paid money for it once upon a time. You want to use it as long as you possibly can. So we've looked at things like the auxiliary gym and the main gym, and looked at what's its next best use to use that for. But unfortunately, the auditorium and the dining area really didn't make sense to retain. So a quick update on the site strategy. Essentially, this shows your new school. This is the highway out front. We do plan on putting a new parking lot and new visitor drop-off in front of the school. Lots of parking here in addition to the parking lot over in this area. We also need a slight realignment of this road on site to accommodate a new performance gym. So really, site work is relatively minimal for this site. In addition to, it's a little bit hard to see, we're currently looking at where we would need to place a athletic facility, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So this drawing, it's actually not a architectural drawing, if you will. You see a lot of color on here. You'll see in a few minutes we have a type of work diagram which shows you what's being added, what's being renovated, that sort of thing. You'll notice on this plan every single thing is colored, whether we're touching it, whether we're renovating it, whether we're not, because of that exhaustive study and making sure that every space is being used to its utmost potential. So just one example, the G building right now is being used for cosmetology and marketing and some other areas. We're not planning on doing anything to that building, but we studied that area hard and said, how do we use this space best in an entirely new programmed school? So that's just one example there. But generally, looking at the entire plan, you'll notice that yellow spaces are CTE classrooms in addition to the dining space here. We're actually renovating the library into a STEM and mechatronics collaborative space, so those two programs can work together. Here on the front, we have a new classroom wing with some administrative space along the front. These are additional CTE classrooms, and we worked really hard to put these in a location to where, if you want to, you can actually utilize these spaces where the public can come to them and use them, use their services. For example, cosmetology. How better to teach a student how to do cosmetological services, you know, nails, that sort of thing. How do you teach them better than to actually bring in the public and work with them? So that's a big part of putting those programs here on the front of the building, directly adjacent to parking. So there's lots of opportunities with that area. We also propose a new auditorium, about 875 seats, much more appropriate to an 1,800 student school. We're reusing the existing kitchen, but redoing the servery, so a new servery area. And then on the back side, a new performance gymnasium with a full 94-foot court. That's one of the limitations of your existing court. While it has quite a few seats, it doesn't unfortunately have that longer court that a lot of people really would expect to see in a new school today. A band room that's about twice the size of your current band room. Not just twice the size, but twice the height. And that's really, really important for band students. We actually talked to some of the band folks there, and they talked about, you know, some of the ways their hearing has changed over the past few years just by being in a room that's frankly too small for the acoustic energy of the band currently. So, you know, looking from a safety standpoint from places like that, really need to make that space quite a bit larger. One thing that made a lot of the areas in the main school work is actually moving all the outdoor sports to a field house. Frankly, we can build a field house structure a whole lot cheaper than we can build a school structure. So let's do a really nice, you know, one of those pre-manufactured metal buildings. They look great out on athletic sites. So put outdoor locker rooms, showers and restrooms, a coach's office to keep eyes on the street down in that area, and then also a satellite athletic training program. Now here we have talked quite a bit about Title IX, so we want to make sure that this area truly covers all of your outdoor sports in addition to the baseball building. So this is not just the football house, this is for everyone. But moving those spaces out here, we were able to open up some spaces around your existing gym for more indoor sports and for those areas. This shows the second floor. Primarily the existing second floor we're not doing much with. It'll remain homeroom spaces. With the exception of 4 science labs, we're going to renovate those into what we'll call the low-tech sciences. And then here at the front of the school, in new space, we'll create more of those high-tech science labs that will include chemistry and biology and some of the other spaces where you really want nice utility services and other accommodations. We also have the media center in this location, set above the administrative suite overlooking the entry, so kind of a nice prominent space for that area, and then the upper portion of the auditorium. Real briefly, this shows type of work. So for example, the blue shows all the new construction versus green, which is minor renovation, and then yellow, which is major renovation. So just to kind of keep everybody on the same page with that document. Really handy to keep everybody there. Quickly about phasing of the project. This is not going to be quite as simple as Central High School, but we talked a lot about it, and once we figured it all out, we said, well, actually, it's not that bad in a lot of ways. So what we need to do is actually build the gym and the band room first, and what we can do is we can leave the wood floor out of the gym and provide just a little bit of electrical service, extra electrical service there, and that'll actually become your satellite dining room for the duration of construction. So build that space first. Then, while you're building the remaining part of the front of the building, your dining room will be offline, your auditorium will be offline, and the administrative suite will be offline as well. So we're going to put some administrative portables here and create a main entry to the school in this location. We have a dash line here, so we are thinking about, you know, how do we secure that area, make it just as secure as a school that's not under construction. And of course, you'd build a field house at the same time as well. So thinking about how we strategize utilities, student pathways, and security during that portion. And then of course the last phase, once the new addition is done, the gym reverts to a nice new gym, and then over the summer you renovate the remaining areas and you're done. So we've given that quite a bit of thought and feel really good about the phasing strategy. So what's the school going to look like? We heard a lot from different, you know, people in the community, different parents, kids in the school themselves. They said, our school has no front door. It has no presence to the street. and that's not just because there's trees between you and the street. There's, it's kind of a school that sort of hides among the bushes, if you will. So what we're proposing, you know, we've stacked the building intentionally to give it more of a presence. We've created a porch entry area, which is where the public would come in to the auditorium and any events in the dining room, as well as to the administrative office here. This shows another angle from this direction. It's an intentionally much more modern school. You know, the Battle Creek schools, we really played with the agricultural feel of those sites. Well, this is in Spring Hill. This is in a technological, you know, wonderful area of the country. You guys have GM and other, you know, heavy tech, heavy industry things. So let's make this a really forward-thinking school. This shows part of the lobby here as you come in. One of the things that is nice about the existing Spring Hill is it has quite a bit of height to it. It has clerestory windows up high. And so while we're tearing that out, we don't want to replace it with something that's not as nice as what's there. So let's give them a little bit of volume here. Let's add some windows into the dining room and into the lobby space. This shows the dining room. We're proposing that sort of the cool V-shaped columns from the outside move indoors. But that's actually kind of a strategy for eliminating long span trusses over the dining room. So while it looks cool, it doesn't necessarily cost much, or it costs more either. So a really nice light-filled space. This is about the same size as Central High School's dining room, so a really big space where you can properly seat all the kids all at the same time. And this is a quick view of the interior of the gym. It's shown set up for volleyball. We're proposing a panelized lighting system. It's a lightweight structure that goes around the outside. It lets light in, but doesn't cost as much as clear glass windows. So up to about 10 feet, we'll have CMU walls for durability, but then a really cool, light, airy structure up above. So that's the end of that. I wanted to just update you guys on the conceptual design, and happy to take any questions about that if you have them.
Thank you. Go over the timeline again for me.
Well, that is a good
I know money first, and then.
So that's something we actually need to talk a little bit more with Bell about as to exactly when that happens. We do know that, you know, our documents will not be done until early next year. The high school takes quite a bit longer to plan overall than the elementary school or other projects of that size. So, you know, if you think, let's start the gym at that point, that's probably a 8-month construction cycle. And then we really need to think about, you know, when that comes online and when you can have kids out of certain areas and that sort of thing. So it's probably a early 2022 project for full completion.
Okay. What about GMP? What are we looking at?
Well, the price for all this will be...
No, I meant when.
I was trying to break the tension.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, his drawings probably won't be complete, the price, till October. So we need probably another 60 to 90 days after that to bid those out. So we're looking at a GMP probably, you know, December, if we're lucky, 2019.
So actually, in this capital request, we couldn't even really start anything till after.
Correct.
I mean, so we have 2 projects we've requested, but this one is going to be long-term out, beginning it. So I'm just thinking in terms of
Timing. And budget.
And budget, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
And, you know, we really were trying to bring a budget number to this particular meeting, right? To correspond with Doug Lacona's request, you know. And we're just not there, Madam Chair. We just need a little more time. Part of our process, because basically right now you don't want to know the budget number because the commission wouldn't approve it based on what you've seen. And that is par for the course. That's the way this process works. A lot of times when we get our first shot out of the gate, when you meet with the owners, David Moore, he sat in this very room. We talked about Battle Creek for months, planning it, and then we got first budget, we were out of budget. So we've done that now with Spring Hill. Ben and his crew have, we've all met with those, with the Spring Hill folks, all the committees, planning it, programming it, and that's where we're at. We just got the first schematics to put a budget to it, and again, that number's higher than the county commission is going to approve, or at least that's been communicated to us. And so now our process kicks in, and we really need another probably 4 to 6 weeks to really start massaging some of these areas, to give you a budget that you can take to the county commission and have discussions with. So we don't have that number tonight, unfortunately, but we would ask, maybe in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we would have the budget number, Madam Chair.
Okay, I think we are all concerned as to whether both projects would be funded
Sure.
at one time. Certainly McDowell is ready to go.
It's ready.
This one really wouldn't have a starting date even within this, in 2020, even by spring of then, even if we had, so it may be, interesting to the concept that we do need more money, a little more money, oh my gosh. For McDowell, but we certainly are not gonna use or need any money for Spring Hill for quite some time. So it's just something to consider by the board, I think. Any other discussion? Yes.
Just looking here briefly, and I may have overlooked it, is there a concession stand in here somewhere for the basketball? I don't see it, but I just may have overlooked it. There will
So
be.
the strategy is to reuse the existing concession stand for inside the building.
Just want to make sure.
Okay, I appreciate all that y'all's coming and all of this, and, I was so impressed with Battle Creek, just want you to know. Mr. Beaver and I went out there the other day, and it just blew me away to see, well, of course, you know I love the color, so, but, it is incredible, and I do know that, Spencer has done everything they said that would do and more in trying to find savings and to, be able to complete the project within those costs, so we'll just have to wait and see about Spring Hill, I guess. Anything else? Mr. Moore?
One thing, I just had a question, Ben, about the numbers you got, and I know that I'd asked for this today. The capacity numbers, I know that's been difficult because Spring Hill High School, the core capacity is lower, but I'm keep getting completely different numbers on how many student classroom space we have there. Now, you said currently at 1,100. One of the reports that I'd asked for said it at 1,200, but I have heard anything up to currently we have room for 1,500 students. Did you guys have any I'm not asking you to nail that down because that's obviously not your spot. What I would ask you, did you guys have some additional discussion during this about what that number actually is? And is that what, based on your programming, the number you guys came up with, is the 1,100?
I think I understand your question. One reason there may be some difference is some of the classrooms right now, for example, are being used as the principal's office, and a classroom is being used as special education office. And so, if you look at the school today, it's probably lower than when we looked at it and said, what's the highest and best use of each space? So I think that's one reason there's quite a bit of difference.
Okay.
Does that?
It does.
Okay.
I think it just, I wanted to bring it up simply because it'll probably segue into some other things about the fact that if we can't do this year, there's clearly going to need to be some decisions made about how to best use that space. Because we're already at and above 1,100 students, if I look at that correctly. That's the reason I bring that point up on that part.
Okay. If there's nothing else, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate you.
All right, I'm gonna go back up to the very beginning of the, agenda, and we'll try to follow it as, yes, excuse me, Ms. Moore.
Two things, and actually, if someone can refresh my memory, did we not already send over a request for funding for capital this year? Or am I completely forgetting that? What was the total on that?
The total that we've sent over is $60,105,883. That included $20 million for McDowell, $36 for Spring Hill, $2.5 million for ongoing capital repairs, regular buses at $435, 90 passenger regular buses at $288, and then 4 special ed buses at $396. Then we also figured in, the remaining lease payments, for Lenovo at about $486,883, which brought it to a total of $61,058,883.
Okay.
That's what we sent over.
That's it.
All right, finances first, and, Ms. Cox is here, and you got, I think Doug let you know that he'd posted those today, the May financials. Hopefully you've had a chance to look them over. If not, are there any questions for, Ms. Cox about that? Or if you have questions, I'm sure that, before the next board meeting, they'd be glad to answer them. Also, there is, some budget amendments on there as well. They're in the process of getting everything so they can close the books. One of the things we need to bring up too is Doug asked if we could have a call special on the 26th prior to the commission meeting on the 27th so that we can do all of the cleanup budget amendments at that time. And that's on a Wednesday. He had wanted us, he had thought maybe we could both have a meeting that night, but the commission's going to meet at 4:30 on the 27th. So if we could meet, it makes no difference to me. We just need a quorum, 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock. How do you all feel about that? On Wednesday the 26th, simply to vote on the cleanup amendments before we close the books. So we don't have any, audit findings.
And we're gonna start on the meeting for the 24th as well. There's like only one on this agenda because that's what we're in the process of right now is, I've been working on the cash recon for the past 2 weeks for the 141 fund, and it hadn't been kept up in audit standards since I don't know when. So I started in October because that's the month Doug was appointed. I'm in May, actually finished May this morning. So that's a huge thing that we were trying to get done because hopefully we'll be able to eliminate one audit finding. I can't say that till we don't get one, but I'm going to try to go back to July, August, and September because they were like, well, since you're done with May, why don't you try to go back further? So I'm going to try to do that, and of course the financials are in there. Like we had stated, Ms. Parker had asked for those early, and we are actually fully staffed as of May, so we're actually able to get things done in a timely manner. Since I think I was appointed in the end of December, and since then we've been just struggling to make ends meet. So we're glad that we finally have a person in every position, trying to get as much as we can done. It's kind of hard to cover as many bases as you can when you finally get fully staffed in May because June 30th is so close. But we're going to do our best to, get taken care of as much as we can. And of course, you'll see probably a bunch of stuff on the board meeting, and then of course on the 26th, whatever is left. So.
Much more.
I was just saying, I'm available at whatever time on the 26th, if we can meet that. So whatever, if anybody has any restrictions, make sure we have a quorum.
Wednesdays because some people do go to church. So what about 5 o'clock? With everybody, I need a quorum, so tell me you'll be here, okay? 5 o'clock on the 26th. It should be, and then that's all we're gonna be, looking at is those budget amendments. Okay, great. Any other questions for her? As we move forward, I know we still don't have an approved budget. We're not quite ready for, waiting for the commission to see what they're doing and so forth.
Tonight, the revenue, numbers is right now, we're going to discuss how much revenue is going to appropriate.
Okay, all right. And once we get some definitive things back from them, we'll schedule a budget meeting as well. Okay, moving on then. If there's no other comments on finance, then I'm in instruction. The impact report, Dr. Woodard. That's the AP courses? No, what is it?
Test. Okay. Thank you, Chair Kinzer and school board members. Just want to take a brief couple of moments to share with you some good news about things that have happened this year with regard to scholarships. We had a really strong class this year. Class of 2019 was a really strong class, and this particular class earned $17.8 million in academic scholarships. Real pleased about that. That's a $2.6 million increase over the previous year, and really proud about that. In addition to that, there's a breakdown that shows you the scholarship numbers per school. We're also pleased about the numbers that we're seeing with our Ready Graduate Indicator. One of those indicators is looking at the number of industry certifications that we have each year. Last year we had 69 industry certifications for nearly 900 graduates. This year we have 343, and we're extremely proud about that. So kudos goes to our CTE teachers and also to Dr. Lori Brown for helping to raise that number as well. There's a breakdown which demonstrates to you where those industry certifications were earned. You can see that 257 of those were OSHA 10 industry safety. And then, of course, we had 42 that were construction core, 3 ServSafe, which is for culinary. That's a very hard one to earn. 13 certified nursing assistant. 26 earned certifications this year for IT. That's Comp IT Fundamentals. 1 earned the Comp TIA, which is a very, very rigorous one as well with the A+. And so really pleased about the number of certifications that our students have earned. In addition to this, we've also tracked our donations. Donations come into us, we report that to you, but we also tracked it as well. You can see here on the next page what our donations look like. And this gives you an idea of what the community investment looks like in terms of dollars that have been donated to schools. And so it's something that we're tracking as well. And just below that, we have the money that we've received from grants over the past year. So just want to give you guys a breakdown of some of the money, where it's going, and just give you a little bit of good news. And this is just an FYI, nothing to vote on.
Thank you. It's always good to see positive things. Appreciate it. Any comments, any questions, Jim? Okay, then moving on to AP courses, consumable fees,
Okay, I will move into
graduation
that.
dates, just all the above.
Yes, ma'am. We've rolled everything into one document for you guys. Easy to see, easy to read, and this is the exact same. There were no changes in fees, so these are the same fees that you all approved last year. There was one addition, and I'd like to ask Dr. Penner to come up in just a minute. Dr. Penner is looking at adding some clubs to Battle Creek, and he is going to submit permission to bring those clubs aboard in next month. But then, of course, we just kind of want to give you an idea of what those fees look like. So you should be looking at 3.2 and also looking at 3.24 at the same time. Both of those documents give you an idea of what fees look like. So we can just kind of discuss both of those at one time and eliminate a little bit of time tonight. But I'm prepared to answer any questions if I can. But first, I want to allow Dr. Penner to talk about some of the fees that he would like to have for Battle Creek. Dr. Penner?
All right, thank you, sir. There are several clubs as we began to get folks who are wanting to be a part of the Battle Creek community. One of the things that we asked them was what clubs or sports are you interested in being a part of doing? And so we wanted to find out what the faculty members that we were hiring were interested in being a part of, what they were passionate about. And there were a number of things that they were interested in doing that haven't, at least to the best of my knowledge, been that we don't have on middle school campuses, other places in the county. But since we have people who are interested in those, we began to, as we've been doing summer registration and things like that, we've got kids who are also interested in being a part of those clubs. And so some of those things have national organizations that are a part of them. Some of them do not. There are a handful of them that are going to be very costly to be a part of, things like a rocket club, that if we were going to actually participate with NASA student rocket launch competition, it would take a little bit of money to be a part of developing those things just at the school level. We could fundraise or do those kinds of things if we make it to do a national competition, but even just to be able to build a rocket on site, you know, that's what those kinds of fees are for. So they're either for some fees or for the cost of materials that we'd need to do with the club, or they would be state, national, or kind of regional fees for an umbrella organization for that club. Does Anybody have any questions about any specific clubs? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, they're not listed on our, are they? They are listed.
Yes, ma'am. Take a look at, the form that says blanket fee, and then if you scroll to it's the third page that says 5 through 8 fees. All the Battle Creek, proposed fees are listed in bold.
Like
Under-
14 through 22 would be those new ones.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. If you click on 3.24 blanket fees, and then look at the third page, that's where you'll find the middle school fees. The first one is the high school, and the middle school can be found on the third page of 3.24. And all of those in bold are the fees, proposed fees for Battle Creek organizations. You should see, FCCLA, Junior National Honor Society, Junior Optimist International, Science Olympiad, Academic Quiz Bowl, Math Counts Competition Team, the NASA Launch Rocket Club, Drama Club, and then Student Council.
And a number of these have corresponding clubs in some of our high schools in the county, but not all of them.
So you're saying these are the only ones that have been added since last year to this list?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions or comments about it? Do you want, can we put this, all of these fees and all this on consent? Yes? Right? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me get back to where I'm supposed to be here. Okay, the application for approval of, the ESSA.
Ms. Kinzer,
Yeah, excuse me, Ms. Parker?
can I ask one question about the fees? I'm sorry, it took me a while to find where we were, because I thought we were on 2, and we skipped down to 4. I was looking for Battle Creek and couldn't find it. For these fees, if there's a child that's not able to pay this, free and reduced lunch, whatnot, how does that get funded? I mean, I guess I'll just start there.
My understanding is that any students who are eligible for free or reduced price lunch, then we are able to request a waiver for that at the end of the school year. If there are folks, though, I mean, I'm personally committed to making sure that if kids want to be a part of these things and they can't afford it, even if we don't have a district initiative set up for that, we're going to make sure that kids can participate. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We'll pull it out of school funds if we have to do so.
Well, and one of them is $50, right? Do we ask for $50 for anything in our other fees?
At the middle school level, we don't ask. I think that'd be the highest one that I see at the middle school level. Now, there are some high school level ones that are significantly higher, and there are some athletic fees that certainly get higher than that. Cheerleading in particular can
I'm aware of that.
get outrageous, but
Yeah.
the nature of that particular one has to do with the amount of the cost of the materials to shoot a rocket to spec for this kind of a competition. That just kind of scratches the surface of what they could do to kind of play with and practice with.
Mhm.
And then if they were able to actually go to competition, they'd have to actually do fundraising for that, because I don't want to build a fee that would send them to a national competition. That would end up being in the hundreds of dollars.
So this is just the bare minimum to cover for this particular club with,
To be able to
Right.
build, construct, and shoot off some test rockets. Yes, ma'am.
and so how many kids would you anticipate? I mean, if you just had 5 kids in the club, $250 going to be enough to cover your cost?
That'd cover about 2 rockets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, excuse me, Ms. Morency.
The Optimist Club, sometimes, you have to have a sponsoring club. Is that one of the ones that has that has to be sponsored? Like, I know Rotary has to sponsor, your Rotary Club has to sponsor the, what, is it the Optimist? Or
Yeah, so the Rotary Club has a different organization that it's called Interact, and then
Right,
Kiwanis
okay.
has the Key Club at the middle school level, or I'm sorry, the Builders Club at the middle school level, the Key Club at the high school level. Junior Optimist International is the equivalent
Okay.
for the Optimist, the
So-
adult organization.
Do you have, clubs that would sponsor that already in mind?
We have them in
In
mind, but we
mind.
gotta get board approval before
Right,
we can, yes.
okay, all right,
Yes,
thank
ma'am,
you.
we do. In all three cases, actually.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we did skip from one to the other one, and so we'll go back to the go ahead.
Chair Kinzer, just to ask for, clarity, would the board allow for Mr. Penner to bring, the list of organizations to you all at the, next board meeting? Would that be permissible?
Do we need that? Do we need that?
Feel you'll need it? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
All right. So now, we're ready for,
I would
Okay.
just like to say, I don't think we need it, but I do think it's a new school, and so next year I would like to see how many kids actually participate in this, and whether or not cost is prohibitive for some kids. I mean, I know someone has pointed out to me $250, $350 for band at the high school level, you know, so I know that there are some things that cost a lot of money, but you're a new school, and I think it's great to dream big, but I also don't think you necessarily know if you're gonna have any kids that really have an interest in the NASA Rocket Club, and maybe $50 is a turnoff to some kids, and so I think it's reasonable just to, you know, for you to look at that next year. I don't know that, I mean, I think it would be interesting for us, but, you know, maybe next year. I encourage you to shoot for the moon, and it sounds like you're doing that with that club, but, you know, be interesting to see how it all goes. So I wish you luck.
Good evening. This is our, an annual requirement that we submit our application to you guys for approval. As you know, our cycle is we submit a preliminary budget in May, they give us feedback, and then we get our final allocation in July. And we make adjustments depending on the carryover that we have, and submit another budget in October. You know, the fiscal year for federal starts in October.
okay, any questions about it? Then I assume we can put this on consent. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to zoning and facilities, anything to report? Oh, my goodness, we get both of you. Oh, my goodness. You've come to tell us you're bringing all the revenue to us, right? I didn't say that was being discussed. Do y'all really wanna know? No. No. I didn't think so. Later. Okay, under capital reports, we've got architect's report, Hewlett Spencer, all of that is just FYIs, isn't it? Okay, and what about the train reports, FYI? We've done 3.4, 3.5. Okay, ready for 3.6, the MOU, Maven Moore, and I do think we need to have some discussion about that.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Breeden.
I apologize, just unmuted my microphone, I didn't realize you were back to facilities. But it sounded like there weren't any questions on the reports, but we can answer those. They are on the MOU with Spring Hill, we did put that back on here, we tried to get some additional information. I'm actually gonna yield to Mr. Moore, because I know, he and I have had a conversation, and he's had some conversations about that to see if he feels like we're ready to move forward with that.
Okay, Mr. Moore?
Yes, so just for a point of discussion on this, I think we met, several of us, in various capacities. I know Stan and some other people tried to meet with the city of Spring Hill to try to work this out, over several months of period, and, I think the end result was, and where the city of Spring Hill is they just do not have the funding allocated to, address what we need out of the MOU. And because of that, and I don't know how functionally to do it, but I think my opinion would be that we should, I don't know the proper term for this, invalidate the MOU, negate it, cancel the MOU, and really kind of free Stan up and the rest of the staff up to explore some other options, which I have a feeling there may be some other options we can look at. My goal with that is to get a bridge done on this property to connect these two schools together. And I think getting out of this MOU kind of frees us up to explore options that may be able to get that done faster than if we tried to wait for the city of Spring Hill to come up with money. And I don't see them allocating money for this anytime soon.
We'll need to at least vote on that, wouldn't we, to, how exactly would we do this?
Yes, you definitely need to vote on it, and, I would suggest you build in some kind of time period, that you give them one final option to exercise the rights, and then terminate, 10 days, or 2 weeks, or 30 days, or whatever you deem appropriate, but, that would be my suggestion going forward. If you're gonna cancel it, just say, okay, we're gonna cancel this in 30 days unless you're ready to move forward and either buy the property or build a bridge.
Okay. Well, I'll just share my opinion on that. I appreciate that. I think my view on that and my concern, and to be clear on this, my thing would be that canceling this MOU does not mean that we could not still work something out with the city of Spring Hill, in my opinion. I don't think that stops this at all, and that's not what I would be looking to do on this. But my concern with setting a time limit, and I'm just kind of shooting, because the option is, based on the language in the MOU, is that they can either come up with a plan to build this bridge or just come up with a lump sum of money and give it to us and take possession of the land, and then we're just simply waiting until they can fund the rest of it or something else happens. And to me, that's a concern that, I know we talked about this when we first did the MOU, is that was a risk we were taking when we discussed this. And that would be one of my concerns, that we get kind of stuck in limbo if we were to offer that option. Again, at this point, it doesn't look like they have funding to do any of it, or they've allocated any funding. But that would be a concern I would have, that if they did come up with that money, if we gave them, for example, 30 days to do that, that we're just kind of stuck at that point. We've then given up land. They've given us a little bit of cash, but it's not enough cash to make the bridge happen, and we're just gonna have to sit and wait. And I don't think that's what's best for us as a school system, to be in that position. So that's my concern on that. Obviously, if anybody else has any view on that, but that's my concern of kind of where we're at, with where it sits now.
So they would have 30 days, and they could say, here's the money we've got for the bridge, you all take it. I would keep an MOU in effect.
Well, the MOU is not contractual. I mean, it says that in the document, that it does not bind either party contractually. I guess my thought on the 30 days was just to make a break point and say, okay, you close within 30 days, or we're exploring other options. You don't have to do that. That's more a political decision on your part as to whether, what are the repercussions of moving forward and just saying, okay, as of this date, we've terminated any obligations or any expectations under this MOU. You certainly could do that. That's up to the board and what the board deems appropriate.
Well, Mr. Sims?
We have 14 days until the meeting. Would that be sufficient time? I mean, this is a public meeting. They had right to be here. It was on the agenda. I mean, could today be official notice and then we finalize it come next, our actual meeting to vote on it?
We can't vote on it. It's not a meeting.
No.
Yeah.
Not voting on it, but
At the board meeting.
at the board meeting.
At the
we
board
could vote
meeting,
on it.
absolutely.
And today, I mean, if they were here, they would know that we've said that we're gonna vote on it to finalize it.
Again, it's up to the board and what the board deems appropriate. I understand that completely, and also it depends on what you expect them to do within that 14 days. Would you require them to close within 14 days, or just allocate funds to close down the road, or something along those lines? But yeah, this MOU has been out there for a long time, so, you know, it's not like they didn't know that this would eventually have to come to some kind of end. So, it comes down to more, not a legal decision, but a political decision on the board's part as to what's appropriate. Knowing that you'll be working with the city of Spring Hill down the road, and so what's appropriate and what's not, and how much time is enough is your decision to make.
Ms. Parker?
I was just curious, if we terminate this MOU, what would be the plan from our standpoint to move, if we wanted to move forward with potentially a road? Obviously, we've got schools that have desperate needs, so finding a connecting road between, is that something that we'd be looking at trying to secure grant funding, or is that something that we would be looking at taking or asking the county commission for funds for? 'Cause I just am not sure. I mean, I think the city of Spring Hill, if they prioritize it, they can seek a grant just like we can. I just don't know what benefit we necessarily have of where this falls on our pecking order.
I think the sad thing about this is that we're building 2 schools and for their constituents, their children, and to not have that bridge and not have that access between the 2 schools is just unbelievable that they would not prioritize that. I don't think we can build a bridge. And I'm not thinking, we're even thinking in those terms, but I don't know what the next move is. I don't know. Mr. Moore?
My opinion of what I would envision is that were we to vote on this to cancel the MOU at the next meeting, is I would ask, what I would want to do is ask Stan to kind of do some looking into what other options we may have and bring that back to us. I agree with you, we have lots of needs. This may not fall very high on that list of needs. It may go way down there, and that's understandable. But I think, again, in my view, canceling the MOU does not negate Spring Hill from immediately bringing this back once they have funding and saying, hey, we're ready to go. We could easily vote on that immediately and pick right up where we left off. But I think I would like to give Stan an opportunity to take the staff and give us a month or so to bring us back maybe what some other options could be and what it would look like.
I guess, Mr. Breeden, is that something with all that you have on your plate that you want to investigate that?
Dan?
Sorry, the quality broke up there. I think I picked up all of Mr. Moore's conversation there, and I would agree that at this point, as long as the MOU exists with the city of Spring Hill, we're pretty much bound to pursue that as our option. If that MOU is released, you feel like there are other options, in no way are we suggesting we would use school funds for that. I agree, I don't think we have any school funds to go toward building roads and bridges. But, I do think there are other options, that we could pursue that may have some opportunities. Again, we're really kind of taking some shots out there that we don't know if there's a lot of fruit on the tree, but there are some options that we would like to pursue, but I don't think we can do that on the MOU. Yes. And it does not appear, we're getting ready to talk to you about a second thing here in a few minutes, but it does not appear at this point that the city of Spring Hill is in a position to do anything at this point. I just don't think, with all of the needs they have and as far behind as they are on their infrastructure issues, that I think that they have the wherewithal to do this. I think staff saw this as a great opportunity for them because they need parkland and they need the park space, and it would have been great for the community. But again, what staff wants to do and what the board of mayor and alderman wants to do is not always the same thing. And so, at this point, we probably can't pursue any other opportunities as long as this MOU exists.
Okay, so what we will have to do at the board meeting would be to cancel the MOU, and then that will release Stan to look into some of these other options and bring back.
Really lost everything.
We heard you.
Ms. Kinzer, Mr. Breeden and I talked today, and this would release him to be able to seek out other entities to get the bridge and the road funded.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. let's move on then.
And I'm sorry, it's just the audio quality has really disappeared on me there quickly. It seems like it's back, hopefully we should.
We got it. We gave you a whole list of new jobs, so. Yeah, yeah, Doug. Yeah, Doug said that. Okay, now, there you go. All right, moving on then. All right. Next I've got, Facilitron, that's you two standing. Huh?
Review all discuss the Spring Hill, the agenda item 3.6.1.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Stan, I can discuss this, and since your audio's in and out. I don't know if you guys have looked at this one. This kind of goes back to when they originally, and this gets into some legal information above my head. Basically, when we presented the site plan for this to the county commission, to the board of mayor and aldermen, I guess the planning commission would have been what it was. The state requires us to do that as a formality. We do not have to have their permission as another public entity. I think there's several things that have come up. I believe that they have asked, or at least one of their board members has asked that we take some action on this, because when they approved the plan, they actually attached some request of us, asking us to do some pretty extensive traffic work based on some traffic studies that they had done. I guess, Jake, my question for you would be, having looked at this, I think in my opinion, there's two pieces to this. There is, I believe some on their side believe that we should have to reject what they approved formally. I guess the other question I have is, and if you can address both of these or tell us how we need to proceed, I'm confused how that we presented a plan that they added addendums to that we did not agree to. Usually, from what I understand on the planning commission, is they simply approve or deny and ask it to come back to them. They did not do that in this instance. They actually made their own recommendations and passed that without us actually agreeing to or anything else. So I'm kind of stuck on legally where this is, to be honest.
I am also. So just a little background. When Hewlett Spencer got started on this project, this Malin Moore site was not within the city limits of the city of Spring Hill. Well, in order to tie on to city utilities, the city of Spring Hill required us to submit a application for annexation to bring it into the city limits. Well, the trouble with that is that triggered a state statute that said that if we're going to put that in their city limits, we've got to let them approve the site plan in advance. In my opinion, the statute requires them to either approve or deny the site plan, and if they deny the site plan, they're supposed to then send that back to you guys with some explanation on why they denied it. Civil Site Design pitched this to their planning commission back in, looks like May of 2018. We didn't have anything to do with that. That was something that they did. They submitted the site plan. Again, they were expecting approval or denial. It was approved, but it was approved with a series of conditions. Really, I don't think either Mr. Breeden or I got any notice of that. We didn't get a disapproval. The permits were issued by the city of Spring Hill. Things went on, and your schools are about built. Now, for some reason, they've decided that approval with conditions was a denial. And according to the statute, if they deny your request, then you have the ability to override their denial. Mainly, theirs is just kind of a courtesy. We show them the site plan. If they deny it, then you have the ability by a majority vote to overrule their denial. So now the city of Spring Hill is saying that their conditional approval was a denial, and they are asking you, again, on schools that are, I believe, 95 to 99% built, to go back and now override their conditional approval, denial, and allow them to go forward. And again, I see you shaking your head. I'm shaking my head also. I don't understand this. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to issue a stop work order? Or, I mean, are they going to, I don't know, but for some reason this has become important to one or more aldermen, and they're asking you to take action. I don't see that taking action negatively affects you all at all. So they've asked that we put this on the agenda, and that's why you're seeing it. And my suggestion would be that at the, regular board meeting, that you guys vote to overrule or override their denial of your site plan.
Any discussion or comments? I'm not sure. I'm in denial.
I mean, to Donna's point, which she said, I'm lost because I'm not sure how they denied something yet issued the permit. So I'm confused. Just my gut on this is to continue operating as we are. I don't see any reason to deny it personally. I don't see any reason to take any action at all, and that's just my opinion on this. I think it's getting into the weeds of something. And from what I understand, I haven't seen a request from the board itself to do this. Or did this come from the board, or did it come from staff?
I think this came from Mr. Lay. I think he made the request to Mr. Breeden that we discuss it, and I think it was one or more aldermen that were asking him to pass that along and get that done. That's my understanding, second or third hand, of how that came back to you guys. Full disclosure, I sit across the hall from the city attorney for the city of Spring Hill. I've asked him the same question that you guys are asking me, and I don't know the answer, other than they would like to see this loose end tied up.
I mean, I'll just say I went back and reviewed their meeting minutes and the audio and video, and they clearly made mention that, as it is highlighted in here, that we don't have to do this. We don't have to get approval from them, ultimately, that this was a courtesy that we offered to them. The state does require us to do that as a courtesy, but there's nothing formal there. And if you read through what their requests are, clearly, they're things far outside of the scope of what we would have ever been able to address. And to be honest, if you look at the traffic study, to go even further, most of these things are things that they should be doing as a city based on their needs anyway, regardless of us adding the schools. And it does note that in the traffic study that was done. And again, that's where I keep coming back to. I almost feel like taking no action on this makes more sense than trying to get into the weeds of something that is just not clear from what they're wanting us to do, or that we really need to do anything at all.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Mr. Moore. They didn't even bother to send anybody down here to explain this, what they want. If you can't send a member of your government down here to explain what you want, I don't know that we need to take any action.
I'm really surprised that, he's City Manager Lay, right? Is making these requests because a couple of board members asked him to do that, or aldermen asked him to do that. They only have power as they sit on that full board in session. So if that's what they want, then they should at least vote on it, put it in their minutes, and then ask us to do it as a whole. Individual aldermen asking him to do stuff is not the correct way as far as...
It would have been the planning commission? Would that be the body that would have to...
That would be overriding the planning commission, and I don't know, that could have happened, Ms. Morency. I don't know that it happened, but from what I understand, the request came from Mr. Lay to Mr. Breeden to discuss it, and but I don't know a lot of the history on the city side of it, of how it got to this point.
And I'll jump in and say, because when I mute my microphone, my audio gets better, but that did come directly a phone call from Mr. Lay to me, and his comment to me was that one alderman had asked for this.
My suggestion would be to put it on FYI and not have any action at all on it, if that's all right.
That's
Yes, and I'm beating that horse, the drum today, but, this is more a political decision on your part than it is illegal. If you wanna do it, I certainly don't think it hurts you at all, but, from a legal standpoint, I don't know that they can stop you going forward at this point, now that we're built out. So that's my suggestion.
Tell them to go over the bridge and come see the school. Okay, right now, I don't, if I need direction any other way, I think that this is just an FYI.
If that's the question, I mean, talking to other board members here, I mean, if, I have no problem coming out of this meeting of directing, if Stan can get a request that I would like to see something formal to come either out of the planning commission or from the full, board itself to tell us what they want. I don't think that's unrealistic for them what are you looking for us to do? And at that point, we can discuss whether that's appropriate for us as a board. I don't think that's unrealistic.
I think that, how can we take action when we're not really clear what, one alderman is the only one that has asked this, so I think clearing it up would be best, so. Okay. Facility use facilitron, is that you, Stan?
Yes, ma'am. At the last meeting, which was, at the end of May, we had planned to have a report from Facilitron in July. We were asked if we could have that in June. We made contact with them. They are trying to do an extensive report on, the use of our facilities, and they have asked us for additional information, which we provided, and they are now working on the report. We have not received that. If we receive it by the board meeting, we can add it to the agenda for then, in 2 weeks, but right now we're waiting for them to get it back to us. But they're doing an analysis, and I'm not sure what all that entails, but they did ask for a lot of information on square footages and, those kind of things which we provided for them. I can't remember all the detailed budget. They wanted our annual budget, our utilities budget, all kinds of things like that. And so we provided all that to them, and they're crunching the numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Can we move that to July? Just wait, the July work session?
Sure.
If that's
Stan,
okay.
did you hear that? That we'll just wait and put that off to the July work session. Just take it off the agenda. All right. Okay, next we're at policies. I don't know, there are not any policies to post, is there? And, no for final adoption. We do have some policies to be reviewed. Okay, let's see. I think we need to have some discussion about those. The first one is 1.400, and that's the proposal to change the regular board meeting to the beginning of the month. And that was a request by the county commission. It seems to be because of meeting time, sometime our work session and then our meeting time is almost right at either after or at the same time as they are when they need budget amendments to be approved. So they've asked for us to that policy change. What we're proposing is that we make this change by having our work session in August, not having a meeting, and then our first meeting from the work session, August work session, would be in September. No, July, excuse me, I'm
July,
sorry.
yeah, having the
I mean,
work session in
I
July and
lost
then
a
having,
month here, I'm sorry.
our board meeting Monday in August.
Right. And so we're really kind of saying we're gonna have a little time there that there wouldn't be a meeting, but we also know we'll have budget meetings involved in there as well. But that's what this policy is about. Is there any discussion or questions about it? Okay. Next one, includes the addition of the Memorial Day as one of the holidays. Okay. Language, yeah, excuse me. Oh, okay, wait just a minute, somebody, okay.
Are we adding a holiday? We're adding a paid holiday, is that what we're doing?
No. Any employee that works Memorial Day has always got that as a holiday. It just was not listed in the policy.
Okay.
So we're not adding an extra day.
Conan?
We had an email chain going on this morning that we would bring up the budget amendment cleanup meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And the timing of that. I was just making sure that we had that, in our notes. And also, I do, now that we're deep in budget season, we've got to get a budget approved by the school board, and moved forward so that we can get this thing in. We had it last minute last year, And, that means it takes longer to approve because the state will get the budget in, and then, if it's late enough, they'll already be on vacation, and when we get back from vacation, they'll approve our budget. So, we can get a budget that we can operate on, quicker if we jump on the ball. So, as long as this change, we get a voting meeting somewhere in the very near future to look at a budget and send our recommendation to the commission, I just wanna make sure that those two things are spoken about. That's all.
We actually, Ms. Cox was very efficient in all the financials. We had long discussion about this, and, we've scheduled a meeting for Wednesday the 26th just to go over budget amendments. We know we need to have a budget meeting. Do you want to have it at the same time, even though I've told them that's a short meeting on that Wednesday?
I would be fine with that. I just know that, we have all of the data.
We now have everything we need.
Yeah, it's just our, where's our position at as far as a request from this board as what we want as a budget, for next year, and getting that on the commission's meetings. We have a ton of commission budget meetings this month. They actually are every day except for Fridays until the 19th of this month, so we can find some time, and I've got even more meetings in July and August, so I just think we need to, we know that this is gonna be something that ping-pongs back and forth for a minute, so we just need to make sure we have enough meetings to pass a budget.
Can we not maybe try to schedule a budget meeting next week?
That would be fine.
Either the, I know financial management and the board meets the 17th, so that might not be a good time. Dr. Marzak, I'm just pulling this out here. So the 18th, on Tuesday the 18th, looking at your calendars. Huh?
Fine.
Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Can't be here. Okay. We would almost need to have a call special to approve, we could approve the
Hold on a
budget on
second.
the 24th.
Excuse me, ma'am. Doug, would you be able to have budget documents, well, I guess we're just discussing the current budget, so that means all documents need to be loaded by Wednesday. Is that okay?
Day after tomorrow?
Yeah.
I mean, the budget is finished.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point,
The
yeah.
last edition that I posted, we don't have any changes to that
Okay.
other than the board saying, hey, this is what we want,
But
you know.
we discussed those attrition numbers, that has not been taken out, or any of the new BEP
Correct.
figures, or revenue figures, or any of that's not in there.
The May estimate is not in there, but I can update for those things. I'm just saying if it's not a huge change, I can have it by Wednesday.
$1 million.
Okay.
Do I have a quorum here so that we can be here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hopefully, Nathan and Natasha as well. So the Tuesday, the 20th, at 6 o'clock, 18th, excuse me. I'm looking at my calendars. It's like, okay. Tuesday the 18th, budget meeting at 6 o'clock. You wanna meet earlier? I don't. No, okay, 6 o'clock. If we come to some agreement at that meeting, we could actually pass the budget at the 24th, couldn't we? So we wouldn't have to have a call special that night. So any adjustments to it that we make on that night, then he would have ready to vote on it on the 24th. Then the 26th, though, we've scheduled a 5 o'clock meeting just for those cleanup budget amendments. Which that needs to be posted as well.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Okay, all right, let's go back to these, policy 5110. You want, who speaks to this one?
I
This
can
is
speak
the
to that.
Okay.
I was approached by assistant principals, and in the past, there's not been a consistent schedule. Every assistant principal at each school just kind of worked whatever they worked out with the administrator. We also looked at the number of days. Our assistant principals were on a 238-day contract. which was more than any other county I researched. Most assistant principals, because they're 11 months, worth like a 222 or a 225. So what I did was come up with a consistent calendar that shows each workday, plus their holidays, any other paid days they would get by their contract. And so we made the adjustment to this policy to adjust for those, calendars.
Any discussion? Okay, the next policy is, the one that Mr. Laconin, proposed, the purchasing policy, correct? No. Oh, okay, excuse me. Let me pull it up and see what I'm looking at here. Somebody tell me what, I can't, it won't come up. Tell me what I'm looking at. Oh, here it is. Code of Behavior and Discipline, that's it. Is this one to make it the one that we brought up before?
There's a lot of changes in this one. The first, one of the first changes addresses vaping devices. We had, a citation can be written for tobacco and those type things. We added vaping devices in with that. So that's the first thing. And then, again, this is the one that I brought to you all last month that you wanted to bring back for this month. These are changes that will be effective in the handbook that goes out for disciplinary actions to all administrators for next year, and Mr. Lang will address any specifics for those procedures.
Okay, Mr. Lang.
Any questions?
Ms. Parker.
So does this mean that this past year, did we operate with our policy being inconsistent with what was in the Administrator's Discipline Procedures Manual?
The answer to that is yes. I wasn't smart enough to audit the board-approved administrative handbook that was presented to the principals and assistant principals to use. And then over time, we got some discrepancies, and then we did a full audit, and we found that we basically have two documents that some of the issues, some of the steps are reversed or may come at a different time, or instead of a parent contact and a contract coming for the second offense, in one area it comes for the first offense. But we were using, since 2017-18, a board-approved administrative handbook. And that's what we use for DHA, and that's what we use for, at all the schools that administrators were using.
So when did you realize that this was an issue with the conflict?
Pretty much maybe towards the middle of this year, that there were some discrepancies, and it basically came out at some of the students with disabilities when we had their manifestation meetings. And the principal or someone in the meeting may say, hey, this is their fifth defiance, or in one book it says bring the DHA on the 8th defiance, and here it says on the 4th or 5th defiance. So we started finding some of those discrepancies there, and then we did a full audit of the handbook, the online parent-student handbooks, et cetera, and this is just an opportunity to make everything match.
I will just say, I can't agree to this being put on consent. I know that we have had a lot of issues with discipline, as I understand, at some of our schools this last year, and I think maybe this inconsistency has caused some issues at some of the schools, but I'd really rather hear from the principals and the teachers, how this would impact their ability to serve the students.
when the handbook was created, the administrative handbook, I know there was a lot of, administrators, SROs, a lot of folks were in the meetings that was involved in processing that handbook, and my understanding, it came out as the choice of what the administrators and others that were involved in that entire process wanted the policy to look like. How they never connected, I can't address that right now, but the handbook itself was the book of choice for the teachers and administrators and all those that participated in all the sessions leading up to that book being produced in 2017.
Okay, then can I ask one question?
Sure.
On here, profanity. I guess it says first offense, administrative conference, parent contact, and/or extended learning. I've been told that at one school, you could have 6 in one day, profanity incidents, and you would not be sent to the principal's office until the 6th one that day, and then your day started over. So, that doesn't even seem like that's consistent, and that's not one that's being changed. So, I assume that that's consistent with what I just read is consistent with what's in the discipline manual, as well as what's in policy. But it doesn't seem to me like either one of those are being followed. So, what benefit do we have of actually changing any of these policies if neither one of them are being followed at this point?
Well, you're exactly right. The consistency across the district and how principals and assistant principals, administrators and teachers evaluate the issue that took place and how they want to handle it, et cetera, and was it a high level something? Was it a low level something? What was it? Are they trying to make a difference with a conversation with the student? It's very difficult to have any policy that is going to be a step-by-step and take out the human equation out of it. You just can't monitor that. So whether we go with this or don't go with it, whatever policy we do have, to be honest with you, the human equation is involved. So either we can go with the administrative handbook, make the administrative handbook look like the policy that's online. Whichever way we go, we're still going to have some level of discrepancy. That's just the way it is from classroom to classroom. Everyone does not see everything exactly the same way, and that's the way it is.
So clarify for me then, profanity. I'm just using this as an example. I mean, I think I could probably throw out a word and you and I could probably decide whether or not it's profane, but if it's directed at a teacher and the teacher considers it to be profanity directed to them and they turn it into their principal and their principal says, nope, bring them to me on the 6th one, how are we, I mean, I understand there's human factor here, but to me, that's not, I mean, I don't think it was the principal said that's not a profane word. I don't understand how it's not being followed. I'm just trying to understand why we should invest time in trying to make something match if it's not going to be followed either way. That's my issue. I mean, I've sat through a lot of policy meetings way before your time.
Sure.
And I appreciate it when policy gets followed, and I know that it's not being followed now.
I can't answer for individual administrators and who's following what, et cetera, but we do have to have consistent expectations for every school, for every administrator, et cetera. How we police that is a totally different conversation, but we need to have a consistent expectation. We don't want one book saying one thing and something else saying something slightly different. So we still need to, whatever we decide to do, it needs to be the same language. And I think that's what we're addressing right now.
Well, just to ask Mr. Williver, which one governs?
Policy, board policy trumps, and state law and then board policy.
Would trump the manual. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying, going back to this, is to change it to the manual, I need to understand why we need some of these changes is where I'm coming from in order to be able to vote on it at the board meeting. Like, I just need some data to explain to me why we need this change. Not just like it's inconsistent, because at some point the board thought that the policy that we already have was good enough. So I'm just trying to understand why we need to go to what we're wanting to go to right now.
The only answer I can give to that is that the process that was used to, put the manual together took in a lot of comments and meetings and sessions, and it seemed to be what the administrators and those who participated wanted the language to be. And that's the only answer I can give you on why one may be different than the other.
Betty?
All right, Ms. Morency?
So, I guess I don't really understand. Are you changing policy to match this book? I think that's backwards. I agree with Ms. Parker. I think that's backwards. Or we change policy. You guys don't change policy.
That is correct.
So I think, I agree with her. I think we have to have more discussion on this. We might not agree. I mean, that's our duty, is to set policy and to change those policies, not this all in one.
We had what we thought was a board-approved handbook that was being used. So if it's board-approved, is that not agreeing that this is what we're going to be using? I understand. But I think at that time, no one knew that evidently, no one knew that it did not match the already adopted policy. And I'm assuming we thought it did.
I've got lights on everywhere, but I'll let, Dr. Marzak, if you want to speak, I think you're, and then
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Pennings, and if we turn the lights off, I think we have better.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. What we're asking you to do is we're asking for the board to adopt these policies so the two documents fit. If, for example, you guys don't want to adopt these, then of course we'll change the administrator handbook to reflect board policy. But that's what we're asking for.
And obviously, that's what should have been done.
Yes.
I mean,
Correct.
we shouldn't have voted on a manual that I guess we had the assumption that it had been, collated some
Yes.
way. So, Mr. Pennings.
You change the book to match policy. You don't change the policy to match the book, because this board discussed numerous times and voted on the policy. So you change the book to match the policy.
And when all this came up, in the last, before school's out, just going around to schools, I asked principals, various principals, not all of them, which one do you use when you make these decisions? Every one of them said policy, because I think they reflected that there was some inconsistency. So I would hope that's the way it's been. But, yes, we will not put it on consent. Mr. Moore?
Would it be appropriate? I'm not necessarily opposed to staff bringing us changes to policy. And I think what my fellow board members may be saying here, that I as a board member, since this ultimately falls to me as a board member of setting policy as one of the group, I'd rather have a little higher comfort level on exactly what's taking place rather than these are just edits that were thrown in there. And they may all be perfectly valid, and at the end of the day, after some explanation perhaps from you or some other principals of maybe some rationale for some of these things, that may be what we decide to do. At this point, I think I would agree. I'm just not comfortable that we're just going to adopt things and throw out, because again, as with Ms. Parker, we sat and spent a whole lot of time on these policies at one point. And the idea of just kind of tossing them out the door, and I've looked through, there are quite a few changes, and honestly, some of it is hard to follow, being that I'm not engaged in discipline on a daily basis. So I would like to, I don't know whether that means having this come back at July work session, having a little more, allot some time for some in-depth discussion on what this is, maybe some documentation to help us understand that. I mean, I'm not opposed to making the changes. I just need some comfort level of that this is the right thing to do.
Dr. Marzak?
If it would be okay with the board, the second one, language to address a disciplinary action in regards to vaping devices, we'd like to get that one adopted early so we can start to message to students that they already know that if they're caught smoking tobacco, they may be written a citation by the sheriff's department. We need to change that to also reflect vaping and vaping type devices. So we'd like to message that to kids
In all of my superintendent student council meetings, especially some of our rural schools, even the students expressed this was a problem. And so we'd like to get word out to students and parents that on day one, if you are caught with a vaping type device at school, you may be issued a citation by the sheriff's department, which means you will have to go to court. So that's the one that I think provides a little bit more immediacy, if the board's okay with that.
That's part of the overall policy, though. No, it's separate. Okay.
They're two separate things, because vaping is not addressed anywhere, in the handbook, so this would be just asking you all to add that language to the current policy. I can take all the information out as far as the handbook and just leave those in, and of course it would go under policies to post. That's what you all would be voting on at the board meeting. It posts for 30 days, and then it goes for final adoption the next month. So I can take all the language out except for the vaping.
So, personally, I would be okay with us bringing that to the meeting with the current policy, adding just the vaping language. And I guess we could look at waiving the 30-day posting on that. Is that an option on that? I mean, you're saying you would, and I understand you would like to get that out quickly, over the summer to kind of keep the message going on that. I would be personally okay with that. I don't know what other board members feel like that, but that seems like a reasonable request to bring to us.
I think, when you look at the schedule that we're going to be, to waive the 30-day policy in order to get that out, because you actually are gonna have a meeting on the 24th, and we really won't have another meeting per se till August. So maybe that would be the thing to do as well. But, so you're saying you're gonna present the policy as it is with the vaping included? As it currently is? Okay, is that all right with everyone? No, okay. Mr. Beaver?
Well, I see this, that we're trying to take this, a policy, and then say, okay, we'll buy this, so let's change it, and let's vote on it. And then a month later, let's do this again. Why don't we just do it one time? That's all, And I know you're wanting to do it before school starts. Well, we got 2 months, or a month and a half, something like that. So let's do it all at once.
Well, that's what I think we're saying, is do it all at once as a policy as it exists now. Is that not what? No, I'm asking.
Well, if you look, there's a lot more changes to this policy.
No, they're gonna take them out. They're gonna revert back to the original policy. That's my understanding. That's what,
Right.
Are you all listening to me here? So we've got, I'm losing it. No, my understanding is that the policy, if we are to vote on it, it is the original policy with none of those changes that agree with the policy manual. That it would be the policy that exists today as of this moment, with only the addition of vaping.
Right. Any changes proposed because of the handbook would not be included.
Would not be in there. Is that okay? Huh? Ms. Parker?
I had a question separate from that,
Okay.
so I'll let you get the answer to that.
I just want to make everybody understands that that's what we're doing here. We're not making any changes to the existing policy, but adding vaping, and that's it. Okay. But we'll leave it on new business so that if there's any further discussion. All right, moving on then,
She had a question.
oh, excuse me, Ms. Parker.
Well, I found a policy 6.307, which talks about drug-free schools, and so I don't know about vaping. I was getting a little bit of an education over here about that. But that particular policy, says students shall not consume, possess, use, sell, distribute, or be under the influence of illegal drugs or alcoholic beverages in school buildings, on school grounds, in school vehicles or buses. And then it says this includes but is not limited to abuse of inhalants and prescription drugs. And then it prescribes disciplinary sanctions in that particular policy, so I don't know if that covers it or if it needs to be separate.
I think it needs to be separate.
I think an inhalant would be different than, you've got inhalants for,
Historically, we've dealt with nicotine and tobacco separately, so yeah, I would think you probably want to deal with that separately.
Okay, Mr. Beaver.
okay. And I don't know what page I'm on, but it talks about electronic cigarettes, vapor products, and ultra smoking devices. I mean, so, you know, that's, you know, so that's the reason I think I'd like to see it go through, let's go through the whole policy and see what, I mean, you know, because we're, okay, we're gonna accept this, but we're not gonna accept that. Let's do it one time.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, the current policy is in place. The addendum that we're adding in is that a student may be written a citation for possession of. Because you're right, we prohibit students from doing that, they're still doing it. So this would, not only that, Tennessee legislature just passed a law saying that, you know, vaping and vaping products will not be found within 100 feet of a school door. So this kind of is like coinciding with the state law that's also coming into place. What we wanted to do was add a little bit of teeth to it. So Amanda has been in touch with Mike Barnes, and Mike Barnes says that's completely allowable. So yes, that puts some teeth to it. That also gives some information to parents and students that if you're going to walk out the door and go to school and you're caught, you may be written a citation and have to go to court. So that's the idea, is it gives you teeth.
I understand, excuse me, Miss, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What I'm gonna suggest is, we could vote on the policy because we're making no changes to the existing policy except adding vaping in order to get it before school starts. And then add the policy for in-depth discussion for our July work session. Would that work? Is that okay? Okay. All right. All right, moving on. Purchasing card policy, is that gonna have a number? Is it just gonna be called new policy? Mr. Laconin?
I don't know if it's gonna have a special
Number one, new policy.
But this is the purchasing card policy that goes along with card holders. So we haven't formerly had a credit card or purchasing card policy. This is putting one into place that serves both Murray County government and Murray County public schools, and you will see this at the Financial Management Board meeting on the 17th. And technically it doesn't have to come here. It only needs to be approved by that Financial Management Board. It doesn't have to go before the commission either. But I included it so that you could review it. I was reviewing it myself since we're not voting on it until next Monday. And I do want to make it's actually not this policy. This policy I'm fine with, but the travel and meals that's following this, there may be a couple edits that I might change in there on that policy before we get it in front of the Financial Management Board. But I wanted to put it out here so that everyone could see it and review it. And it will be, you know, open to view after approval for all employees embarking on travel or signing out a card or being a card holder. So.
Thank you. Both of those policies then were presented by you. Just maybe FYI, we wouldn't have to vote on them if financial management's gonna approve them, so.
Which, I would gain feedback if any board members review the policy and have questions or want to make changes. I would contact Ms. Kinzer. She's the voting member on the Financial Management Board, so.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Just thinking ahead on this, because I'm sure that some more of these may come up that, again, technically don't have to be board policy, however, they're going to be. Should we perhaps look at some language in our policy to reflect that we may have these come up? I just don't want it to kind of be, what I wouldn't like to do is have us be partially or wholly unaware that we're beholden to certain things that are going to the financial management. I don't know if we can do a catch-all policy that kind of say we're going to reflect these things. I just would like there to be some official reference that we've noted that we are following this. I think that's a good formality for us as a body to take, that we're acknowledging that this is what we're going by, not just that the financial management board has decided to do it and we're along for the ride. I just would like that it's very clear, not just this policy, that, again, I have a feeling there's going to be some more of these that come up. I don't know how that needs to be worded, but I feel like there should be some way where we reference that, and maybe we review those annually where we come up that anything that is not officially voted on us by, but we accept it as a body, we accept that those things are in place.
Right now, we have an entire section 2, which is finance, and those policies that will be revised will come out of that section 2.
Okay.
So what we can do is just simply, once they're passed, replace whatever's passed by the financial committee in our policy manual with the new one.
I'm okay with that. I just want it referenced somewhere in our policy somehow that we all understand that's where we're at.
Right, well, the financial management, although it's making decisions for everyone, they are decisions for us as, you know, it impacts us as well, so, very good point. Ms. Parker?
I was just gonna say too, I think it's important because people go to look at our policy manual for there to be a section or a place where we know where all these are, because we don't I don't think that people necessarily know that they need to go to the county's policy manual or HR or whatnot to look for these, so I do think that it would be beneficial for us to either have a section or have kinda go ahead and incorporate them in and add them. I mean, I'm okay with accepting these policies and us going ahead and voting on them and approving them to add them in, just, you know, as an extra formality.
Okay.
And that'd be helpful.
Everyone, that's okay, that would be fine for consent. Okay, moving on, the next policy is 3.402 that I, in error, did not attach all the information in the last board meeting, at the board meeting, which I apologize to Kristen for, so as you see, she has brought forth the policy, and we discussed this at the work session. Shipper was here and discussed it, and Stan had some input as well. So I think, do you want to speak to it?
This is much like the travel and the credit card policy. Like, I just felt like there were potentially two sets of rules that we would be operating under, and I felt like having us go ahead and accept what your procedures are going to be going forward for our vehicles would be something that would be beneficial. I know that there had been some discussion about whether or not it violated contracts or anything like that, so I had actually reached out to Doug and to Jake about that. One, to see if there were gonna be other revisions from the county standpoint. Doug had indicated not, and then I'd also reached out to Jake just to see if there was a conflict with the contract, what would govern, and Jake said in that case that the contract would govern, but, that there was no conflict as he saw it at that
That's
point.
attached, is
Right,
yeah.
I was just summarizing
Right,
what the process had been and why I was thinking it.
Okay, shall we move this to consent, or any discussion? Consent, okay. All right, let me get back over here to wherever I need to be here. The annual superintendent's evaluation, is that next? Why?
Yes, ma'am. So the June board meeting is when the evaluation has to be posted, so that will be added to the board meeting. I already talked to Mr. Dudley. He's interested in a paper copy. Does anybody else want a paper copy of the evaluation? Because if not, after the board meeting, I'll send out the electronic version. Mr. Pennings, you would want it in paper in the past. Are you okay with electronic or paper?
Electronic is fine, they finally got my internet back running.
Excellent.
Okay, next on the agenda is the discussion of switching the work session and board meeting. We've had that discussion, hadn't we?
Yes, we have.
All right, and that's already gotten dates and all, and Shirley will also let us know as well. Moving on, the next thing on the agenda was something that had discussion about, I asked to put on the agenda for discussion. There was some discussion of whether to propose a policy, but just for discussion, Ms. Parker had spoken, I think Mr. Lacona had been up on the flu days, had been working up there, and nobody was there, and whereas his staff works on those kind of days. Inclement weather, maybe that's different when it's the safety of, you know, flood and all that sort of thing. So in bringing this just for discussion, the flu days, central office closing, and so we've just included those costs as to what it costs to close the days. Flu being something they're not in contact with the students per se, like the teachers. And actually the teachers stockpile their days. They actually work those days. They've extended the day by 30 minutes in order to stockpile 13 days. Some of it used for staff development, 8 days for when you have to have dismissal. So Ms. Parker brought it to my attention a couple of months ago. It's taken me a little while to get it on the agenda, so now it is. Do you want to speak to it?
Well, I'll just say, this had come up because during one of the flu days, I had a teacher that contacted me and asked if I knew that central office was closed, and I said, well, I don't know why they'd be closed on a flu day, and then, I understood that they were, and that was the case, and I just was curious about how much that actually cost us as a system, when we do decide to shut down. Because, as I understand it, those 12-month employees would have sick days, so if they were sick, they could take a sick day, but if they're not sick and they're not having to work, we're still paying them to work. And so I think we had some of this discussion last year, and I think there had been and one of the reasons why I actually didn't put together a policy per se is I think that we had discussed it as a board that we wanted to maybe not close on those days, but obviously that still happened this year, so, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of what it costs us, especially when we start looking at how much we need to spend on other things.
Dr. Marzak.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, when we take out for flu days, the state classifies those as inclement weather days, so we actually get money from the state. So actually, it really doesn't cost us anything because we're still compensated on those dates. It's only when we exceed our inclement weather days would that cost be prohibitive for the district, which we haven't done in a long time. We haven't exceeded those days. And one of the things that I want to comment to this board about is I'd like to just recommend as your superintendent to be careful of segmenting and segregating out employees, because a lot of these employees, especially some people that work 12 months, not just central office, but 12 months, those people, if they have to find childcare because we're open, then they have to deduct from the money that they're making. It's actually a debit to their own personal pocket, because schools are not out and their children would normally be in school that day. So I would just like to be careful of not segmenting or discriminating or singling out a certain section of our school system of saying, you know what, just because you are closer to a school means you're more susceptible, when a lot of our people, especially 12-month employees, travel to numerous schools and interact with teachers and interact with students. For me, it's always been, if it's unsafe for children and teachers, it's unsafe for adults in the district to really be in school that day. Now, just because the office is closed doesn't mean we're not working. Many of us are answering emails even on the weekends, weeknights, even when the school is closed, even when we're out for snow or ice. We're still working. We're just not physically in a building for a certain amount of time. So personally, one of the things, reached out to TSBA, talked to Tammy Grissom about this. Around the state, these are all director discretion as far as what's safe and what is unsafe. As far as she knows, there's only one system in the state of Tennessee that has a policy with concerns of this. Everybody else pretty much gives that discretion over to the director of schools because we're a little bit more day to day. We know what's safe, we know what's unsafe. Okay. So my preference is to ask the board to please leave this as director discretion, so that we can ensure the safety of all of our employees at all times.
I don't know if you still have the mic, but Mr. Howe's light's been on.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. As parents, we too have to find care when school's closed, just like administrators would have to. So I certainly understand that, but I also feel like when an administrator makes the decision to not be a classroom teacher, that they understand that there's a contract that says they got to work a certain number of days. And I don't see any reason. I can possibly understand it for an inclement weather day, but I feel like with the flu day, if you're not sick, you're not sick. And part of the issue is there was this teacher that reached out to me, needed to talk about her insurance and could not get to HR to clarify that. And it was a perfect day for that teacher to address that. And I say that only because she wasn't in school that day and she wasn't having to deal with 24 kids and wait for her 20-minute lunch break and her planning period. So it would actually be beneficial if sometimes central office could be open on those particular days just for teachers. And they're free to come down there and sign paperwork and do what they need to with central office.
Mr. Howe.
Just to clarify, we're not actually out the money. I mean, that's a budgeted line item. So their salaries are budgeted line items. So we're not actually out $24,000 the way it's presented here. It kind of looks like you're out $24,000 a day times, and we're not. I mean, that's just budgeted money that we're already budgeting.
I don't see much discussion here, so there's no action necessary. Okay? All right, moving on, the memorandum of understanding. This was many meetings and lots of work, and very appreciate, the work we did with MCEA. It was collaborative to be sure, and, 5 board members attended all of the meetings. I think we had 6, 7 meetings, how many, I don't know. But we became pretty fast friends as well, because I think that our one goal was to do what's best for kids, and I think that was the one thing that we, in all the discussion, was what's best for kids and working together. Mr. Pennings chaired that committee, and so I think he can take through and maybe highlight some of the MOU, results.
We broke the bank, we gave teachers everything they wanted. We had good sessions. There were several, actually small procedural changes that the teachers wanted that we put in there. And I would just like to thank all the staff that participated, in the teachers and the board members. I think we came up with a good MOU, and I will recommend at the board meeting that we approve the MOU, because I think it's a good one for us and it's a good one for the teachers. And even during the meetings, they elected a new president of the union. And she is present this evening.
That's right. Ms. Jennifer Inc. is going to be the new president of MCEA. I do want to thank Dr. Woodard was there at every, Renato Powell from Spring Hill Elementary. They had great, and of course, HR, great job in keeping us and keeping the minutes, getting the MOU together, and I really appreciate that. And so I think that it was beneficial for us to be able to meet together in that way, and will be a proud moment, I think, when we can approve this MOU at the meeting. I think to join together and try to move forward with Murray County Schools will be a momentous thing. I'm looking forward to signing it. So,
Miss Amanda deserves a special round of applause and a special thank you for all the time and assistance she put in, not only during the meetings, but before and after the meetings, and she was invaluable in her assistance to us.
she did a good job, and was able to reference things during the meeting to, was really knowledgeable about the memory, all of the policies that we had to discuss. So, is there any questions about it? Mr. Moore?
I don't have any questions. I would just, obviously, I was one of the ones that was able to sit on this, and I definitely appreciate everyone's work. I would ask my fellow board members that were not participating to please review this carefully. If you have any questions, I think Jake could answer some questions. I think Amanda could definitely answer some questions on that prior to us actually taking the voting portion of this. I would just encourage you, please, this is it's a big deal. And I would want to make sure everyone is fully comfortable with the product that was put out here, and we are able to come to the meeting and have a good, clean decision as a board.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, moving on then. I'm sorry, Ms. Parker.
Sorry. One question, this is actually for Mr. Wolliver, but I noticed on here there's a section about physical assault on an employee, which I like that section, but I see where it says that the employee shall be entitled to a free consultation with the board's attorney. Is there any problem there with the consultation being with you, since you're there for us?
You've included that in the past, and I've never had anybody take you up on that in the 15 years or so, but what I would do in that situation is coordinate with insurance, and to the extent that there was no conflict, give them the best advice that I could. If it looked like there was a potential conflict that the board might be involved, then I would certainly try to refer them to another attorney. So it's never come up, but I do like the fact that we can make sure at that point that would be an opportunity for me to make sure that the board has covered all its bases as far as reporting the claim and assessing, making sure the employee's getting medical attention, that kind of thing.
Okay. Seeing no lights, then we're ready for instructional low bids.
Thank you, Chair Spencer.
All right.
The, next couple of items,
And let me,
items, 4.11, 4.12, 4.13, and 4.14 are instructional items. We would like to move forward with getting these items approved. 4.11 is Read to Be Ready, and 4.12 is Ready Math. We wanted to ensure that we had materials ready and in the hands of teachers, so that they were ready for the first day of school. Last year, of course, we had a late start, which caused us to order the materials and get them back very late. So this year, we wanted to kind of ask you for your permission to get it going early. I know that we don't have a budget yet. We were very sensitive to that. And so starting July 1, we would be on a continuing budget, so we would not spend more than what you gave us last year. But we are asking for permission to go ahead and put the curriculum materials in the hands of teachers day one, if you would allow. Thank you.
any discussion? Ms. Morency?
How does this compare with last year's cost on these, on Read to Be Ready?
This is just a little bit cheaper, similar to last year, but a little bit cheaper.
So this is less expensive than last
A
year?
little bit less than last year's. And then Ready Math is about the same as last year.
Okay.
But we're excited about putting these materials in the hands of our teachers day one.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say, and I think the rest of the board appreciates that there is a very concerted effort to make sure that this is happening before school starts. I know in the past, over the last 5 years that I've been on here, that's been kind of a struggle at times, and it's very frustrating. So I just want to say, for one, I appreciate that whoever has been part of that, and he's pointing at you, but I feel like as a whole, I appreciate that as a board member. I think my other board members do too, and I hope that trend definitely continues, that we get that sooner so that they're not just ready to have it day one, but actually they're prepared to work with the material day one. I think that's, but this is great. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
So we can put all this on consent? Okay. Okay, then moving on, I moved on. We're talking about instructional low bids now. Yeah, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I went too far. 4.21, workers' comp, that, we need to vote, we need to discuss that. Okay, there you are. Yes, please. Mr.
Yes, ma'am. Bid number 19-050 for commercial insurance and workers' comp. If you'll remember, we brought those to the board meeting in May, and I asked you to give, since we had just opened those bids, to give us time to review those. We have had a chance, Ms. Alexander and I have reviewed those. We are recommending, based on the RFP, the scoring using the RFP, that we continue our insurance to public risk insurers, for both our work comp and our commercial insurance package. The commercial insurance package is with Liberty Mutual. The work comp is with Ski Risk. This would be a renewal of both those policies. Again, we scored them according to the RFPs, and we believe because of the service and the programs that we have in place currently, that we are better to stay where we are. There was a slight premium difference. It was about $6,000 on $250,000 work comp, but that was overcome by the other factors in the RFP. So we are recommending this for renewal. I have spoken with the insurance agent, and if this is approved at the board meeting in 2 weeks, that will be enough time for this to be renewed on July 1st.
Is there any discussion? Then that should go on consent. All right. Thank you, Stan. Next on the agenda is athletic facilities. We had asked Mr. Pointer to, you want to take, I'll give you 5 minutes as long as it's 5 minutes. I know how you all are. 5 minutes. Okay, have y'all noticed how that 5 minutes turned to 10? No. We always need you, Doug. Okay. Let's go. Okay, I know, everybody, Mr. Pointer has been working on this, we've been. That's right. No, you come sit down with us. Work session. We started talking about all this. Okay. Let's go. Am I going to have to get my gavel out, guys? This is now the third work session that athletics has been our subject matter, and I think at the last work session, we were pretty definitive about wanting to spend some time with Mr. Pointer and the plans and going forward with what we need to look at in the future, knowing that it's going to be a high price tag, but something that really we must do. And with that in mind, so glad to have you here. Go for it.
Madam Chair and fellow school board members and leadership, I have provided for you a list of standards and documentation that kind of outlines kind of a summary to kind of lead into what those standards are. Met with Mr. Chad, I don't know, maybe a month ago or so, and kind of presented some preliminary things to him. And we kind of discussed over it and looked at it. I made a couple of additions and some changes by adding middle school and some other little things, little minor things that I made changes to, but not very much. And then, of course, at the last school board meeting, you asked, could it be ready for the board work study session, and I've provided that information here today.
Okay. Any questions, discussion here? Ms. Morency?
I love this. Thank you for doing it. It was really what we needed. What I'd like to see, and it doesn't have to be any special time, but I'd like to see what each school has that fits this criteria. So, for example, say Spring Hill, their football field, that they meet all these requirements, or what requirements they don't meet, what standards they don't meet, and just go down through the schools so that we can look at this and see where we have to work and where the work should go. Okay? Does that make sense? Thank you.
So from here, what I'd like for us to do is take a look at this and vote for this to be our standard. Like, this is where we want to build to. Once we have the standard and that we approve the standard, then that's when I think Mr. Pointer would do an inventory and just, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and then prioritize those things based on Title IX and ADA, and then go forward from there. Is that, we're on the same page?
Ultimately, that's kind of the only option that we do have. If we base it off of standards, then we have to do an assessment of the entire district. That is very comprehensive and very time-consuming. So if you look at the measurements of the size of dugouts, it will take measuring every dugout in the county to determine if that standard is there. Title IX and ADA compliance is a little easier because we have done some preliminary assessments of that with Dr. Dan Schaeffler, which those things we can actually implement and initiate a lot sooner. I would like to add, though, along with those standard assessments that we will be working towards, that the maintenance side of things become a priority a lot sooner. I think that's something that we can jump into immediately, and I think that is something that we can either bring in-house or we can outsource. Because if you talk to coaches, right, aesthetically, the outside of the facility, what I mean by that, the bleachers and the stadium and all of that, right, they're not as concerned about. Yes, they know it needs to be addressed, but the quality and the safety of the playing surface is the number one priority, because that's where they're spending a lot of their time. So I would, respectfully ask the board that we, as we're moving through these standards, that those are the things that we can kind of put on the forefront to begin addressing, because then I think we can start seeing a lot of movement within the district, and as a collective whole, we are starting to get this ball rolling on some of the things that we are addressing, and I think it will help alleviate a lot of things in our district.
And once you do the assessment, like I said, I would like to have a priority 1, 2, or 3, so that way obviously priority one, or what we need to do first. And furthermore, I've talked to Mr. Breeden about this as well, about where the maintenance falls. Like, is that something that we would allocate to you, or is that something that would fall under him, being facilities? And we've kind of had a little conversation about that, but that's absolutely something that we need to budget for, like, ask for in our budget going forward, is maintenance. And it's, once we have and this kind of builds us a schedule, because there's a fertilization schedule built into this sort of. So once we kind of have that, we do need to talk about how we're going to do this going forward, how we're going to maintain these fields, not just build them and say, here you go. The schools are responsible, the parents are responsible. We need to take ownership of that.
Okay. Again, I'll say I appreciate this. I think this is a great start for us to get some standards in place. So I really appreciate it. Obviously, a lot of work went into this. Kind of two things on this. One is, ideally, like in my mind, what I would like this to get to be is similar to what we did with the maintenance of the facilities in general. We spent a lot of time on the front end setting up a system, letting staff appropriately prioritize this, and then as a board, we let staff handle this as they saw fit, based on kind of the standards we put in place. It would make me nothing happier than us as a board to step back and just let this take place, and we simply make sure it's funded by what staff brings us. I think, Stan is a good example of what he's done with the other facilities. He was able to prioritize and then make that money, whatever we were able to get him, stretch as far as possible. I would like to see that happen with this as well. Again, working out the details of who handles that. That's kind of what I would like to see, because what I would like not to do is to go backwards, which is where we're kind of, as a board, having to discuss what we're doing on a baseball field at this school, or what we're having to do with lights at that school, other than staff has made very well-informed decisions, and they just bring it to us and say, we've got to do this year, and this is how much it's going to cost, and we have to make the hard decisions of how we fund that. That's what I'd like to see personally. So, but again, this is a great start. I think obviously there's some refining we would do as far as what the processes look like, who it's under. I think that's a great point about who handles this. It gets kind of to be a gray area. I am very happy that this is yet another piece. There's more pieces still to come, that we start to get an accurate measurement of what it costs to operate this school system. This is another piece. We've talked about maintenance as a whole, where that keeps getting thrown on. To be honest, the keys is another piece that it gets thrown on as we pull it out of capital. I want to see this is what it costs to operate the school system, which I've argued is far higher than, and I think we're starting to see that from the numbers Doug's giving us, that it's been far higher for a number of years. I think we really need a true and accurate number of what it costs to operate. And I think Ms. Parker has brought this up for several years, and I think this is another valid point. I think we have to have some hard discussions about, when something costs X, whatever that is, can we afford to have it at that school? And I know that's not a pleasant discussion, but I think it's a realistic discussion, and that's not targeted at any one thing, but I think it's part of understanding and being fiscally responsible with funds, is to understand, if we are going to add this sport at this school, what does that cost? And that's not just talking about the jerseys you put on them. That's not just talking about the little things. That's talking about the big things. And I think starting to know what it costs to actually maintain a field, to get irrigation in there, to handle all these things, I think that's an important discussion to have before we just say, hey, we want to add this, let's add it. It's a lot bigger discussion, and I think this gets us to a point where we can start to have, again, as Ms. Parker has asked for correctly for several years, have those kind of discussions where we can talk about real numbers of what it costs to add something to a school. I think that's important, or to even maintain it, even to keep it there, because there are costs there too, and we have limited funds. So I think that's some discussions that I think we'll start to get some numbers on with this, and be able to have honest discussions about those.
Ms. Parker?
The question I have, you mentioned maintenance. Do you have numbers for that? Obviously, we haven't finalized our budget for the coming year. Do you have some preliminary numbers that have been inserted into that budget, or can potentially be inserted in that budget? Because I don't think that we can just know that we have things that we need to maintain and say we're going to wait until July of 2020 to address them. I would hope not.
So it would depend on, whether we in-house it or outsource it. And so basically, this is the numbers that I'm about to give you come basically from conversations I've had with Murray County Parks and Recreation, who did some preliminary assessments early on, and roughly they're saying roughly about $300,000. Now it could be a little less than that, could be a little more, but obviously with our maintenance side of things, I think the maintenance could help alleviate some things that may come up in capital, if you will, that may be able to be addressed through a certain level of maintenance. So for example, like, if you're already outsourcing your maintenance and you gotta regrade Mount Pleasant's football field, right? So Mount Pleasant football field does this, it goes up and then it goes across. And really it should kinda have a grade on each side. And so basically those types of things would be factored in that you would address that wouldn't be addressed on the back end with capital. So roughly about 300,000. I mean, I would have to put pen to papers for some more accurate, but I think it's safe to say about that amount.
Is that something though that you can, I know this is maybe rushing it, but is it something that we can have a ballpark number that we could potentially look at when we have our budget session on Tuesday the 18th?
Tuesday, July 18th?
June 18th.
Oh, June 8th. Yeah, I can have you some numbers. I'm actually working on them on the back end already. I've had conversations with multiple individuals about that, so I'll have it ready. I actually called to see if the number would be firm today, but there's just some question marks that I have that I'm uncertain about. But yeah, I can have as close of a breakdown and some solid numbers as possible to look at. So.
And can there be some conversation, I guess, at y'all's level as to how that needs to be understood, or how that, I mean, can y'all flesh that out for us?
So Stan's at a conference this week, and he's actually going to be talking to some of the other people there and see how they handle that stuff. So figure out where that falls, whose responsibility, how the other systems do it.
Okay.
When we talked about this going back a couple of months in the work session, we talked about what we'd really like to see, really talked about being prepared in 2020 to really start looking at doing anything big to make that part of a capital request, similar to the EMG. I don't know what we're talking about to add to the budget. Right now, the budget is something that's just one of those figures out there that we're going to have to find a way to make work some way or another. May have to make cuts and whatever. It's not real promising at this point. But I think in our early discussion of this, we talked about it being something that we look toward 2019, 20, and 20 being when we put it in a capital request that first year of it. Is that, am I? Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'm not talking about capital improvement requests. I think that would have to come through a different budget, but like Mr. Moore was saying, in order to know what the cost to operate all these schools, we have to know what the cost is to maintain these facilities and maintain these surfaces in a safe manner for our student athletes. And if we're not committed to that, then I do think, like Mr. Moore said, I do think we need to look at what we're going to be doing going forward, including for this school year, because I don't want anybody tearing their ACL because we got a field that looks like this at one of our high schools, because that's just not acceptable.
I think, okay, Mr. Moore.
Just to go with that, I agree that when we talked about this, we originally talked about that. However, I wasn't expecting also to get this so quickly, to be honest. So if that maintenance piece, I don't think it hurts us to have that for the budget discussions. If you can get it, I'm not saying like, I don't want a junk number, so to speak. So if you can get us a good number by that time, I don't think it hurts us to have that discussed. We may not be able to do it, but I think that's a reasonable, if you can have it by then, I think it helps us to have a picture of, again, it helps us to have a picture of what the total budget to operate is. One more thing on this too, and then what I would ask moving forward on this, I am not going to be picky about the timeline of when that is. What I will say I want to be picky about is getting some dates for deliverables on this. So I don't want to be in a position to tell you. I want staff. I want you guys to work on this at whatever level as we start to work on either Title IX issues or just addressing maintenance as a whole, or the capital requests, whatever those are. I would, however, request that as we go through this, that as things come up, you keep in mind that every time you say we're gonna do something, I would like to kinda have an idea of when we're gonna be having those discussions or when it needs to be done by. And that's up to you to set that date, is what I'm saying. I don't wanna rush you on that. I would just like to, as a board, I think we've been asking that for several years, is that as things come up, if we say we're gonna start to do something for this year, we have a date by which time we're going to be doing that, or at least starting that. I think it helps us as a board to have some check marks along the way to know where we're at, rather than, I do not want, and I think that was one of the points that came out of the meeting, the last meeting we had, with Ms. Parker's proposal, that I think it was obvious that when some of the public commented, they don't wanna see this can kicked down the road, and I think all of us agree too, and I think putting dates in there is an important part of making sure that we're not just, this isn't just a plan and it may happen in 15 years. I would like just to start putting dates with these things so that we are, as a board, understand that we are moving ahead with that. I hope that makes sense.
And it does, and I can provide all that information, timetables, and then of course, obviously, factoring in when things have to go out to bid and addressing construction and all of those things, along with the maintenance schedule to kind of coincide with that. I think the biggest frustration that you hear with parents and coaches and administration is that they feel like this kind of comes up every year, and even prior to my arrival, it comes up every year, and then they provide all this information and data and nothing happens. And so this level of frustration of like, well, you're asking me to provide this information, almost trying to pacify me, and not really do anything about it. And I think, by addressing these issues collectively and the standards that are being set, I think this will kind of calm some folks down a little bit, but then they'll actually see that there's proof behind us putting things in place. But the thing is that we're going to actually have to do some things, and they're actually going to have to see it being done. And I think that'll allow us to move forward from that. The one point I do want to add is, does everybody fully understand kind of the opening statement before it gets to the details of the standards? Because I won't make sure everybody's kind of clear on that part of it. Kind of the wording and the language. It's worded the way it's worded on purpose. So I just want to make sure no one has any issues with that. And if you all are uncomfortable, and I may need to change some stuff. And I kind of think that's important.
Three-prong approach. Describe that.
So basically what I'm saying is that our commitment to facility excellence comes from how we address our facilities, access to facilities, and the maintenance of those particular facilities. So basically, as a school board, when we're either building or outlining facilities, or it's at a current establishment or facility, we're looking at the facility one. As a high school, we're saying that we will provide game/practice fields at those facilities. At middle schools, right, because we had to look at the minimum, which was Whitthorne, your largest middle school, it's landlocked. So at a minimum, we're saying that we will provide quality access to practice facilities. Because if in the language we were to put game facilities, if this goes to policy, that would obligate us to try to figure out a way to put game facilities that cannot be put on Whitthorne's facilities. So I had to look at what our minimums were or where our lacks were, and then try to address it from that particular perspective. Then the other part is access. So for example, we have swim teams, right? Are we going to build swimming pools? Probably not anytime soon. Or bowling alleys, right? So we want to be able to make sure that these sports teams have access to these facilities, and that we provide the transportation and or pick up the cost to utilize those facilities. Because the majority of the time, these sports are non-revenue generating sports. So they're having to go to these facilities and pay without a basis of trying to generate revenue, like a gate fee that they can pay for fans to actually come and watch them play. So that is the three-part, and then the maintenance piece of it, which is probably the most important foundational piece of it all, is we can build all of these things and not do anything with them. And Spring Hill Middle School is a prime example of that. We built these facilities, they look great in the beginning, and no one is taking care of them other than what the coaches could do and the little money that they can raise. So, take Battle Creek, for example. We spent $1.7 million, and then 5 or 6 years later, we're coming back and spending another $250,000 on top of that because of not maintaining our facilities. So that's what that means. And there is a cost associated with it in order to do that. So I just want to make sure that the language, everyone understands and everybody is okay with it. I don't want anybody to say, well, I didn't read that, or be surprised when I bring a ticket for bus transportation later or something. Yeah, I want to get it all out there now.
In our assumption, we will vote on accepting this, or is, I mean, this is not an FYI, this is literally, we're gonna vote to accept it. So then the language would be our mission, our standard, all of that, correct?
Yes, and then hopefully eventually, I don't know the process, so, you know, y'all correct me if I'm wrong on this, but eventually this would have to go to policy at some point. I mean, this would have to become our law, if you will, on direction in which we take. Now, I may be wrong about that, and if I am, I do apologize, but this would be something that would be standardized at every school and how it will apply, and this would be board adopted, and we would follow that policy thoroughly.
What? Yeah.
You could put it in your athletics handbook, there are several things that you could do, but yeah, ultimately, it could, if you wanted to, be put into policy, subject to amendments the way that you amend your policy.
Okay. Mr. Howe? I see no lights. Do you have anything else? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sims.
Maybe instead of policy, could we put it into like a long-term plan, 10, 15, 20, I mean, I don't know how many years we would look at trying to accomplish this, because if we put it into policy, then...
The EMG wasn't in policy, it was a plan.
Right.
So I don't know that policy, I think if we adopt it, then as a board, we have legally said this is what we're gonna do, so, I'm sorry, did you have more to say? You,
And I
Mr.
think
Howe?
just adopting it as our standard, for athletic facilities, that could be easily put into the athletic policy or something, or athletic, handbook. I think that would be where we need to put that.
Okay, Mr. Moore? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were pointing to it. Okay, Ms. Parker?
I was just gonna say, if we approve it at the board meeting, then it's referenced in minutes of meetings and things like that, so you have a reference for that, and then if you want to put it into a handbook later on, I think that's certainly appropriate, as long as it's consistent with whatever we adopted at the meeting.
Understood. And this will be going into an athletic handbook based on approval. We are working on the athletic handbook that will ultimately come before the board as well, so that everybody's kind of on the same page and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, do you all want me to put that on consent? Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Pointer. A lot of work ahead, huh? I asked, I think we had requested it. Yeah, really good job. The last thing on the agenda was, you all saw student enrollment, and then, Mr. Moore requested the figures on, capacity, and that was added to the agenda this afternoon. I think that's an FYI. Is there any comments or discussion? No? No? We are adjourned.